mindful listeners out there. Welcome back to another powerful episode of the Mindful Living Podcast with your host, Sana. Well, today we are diving headfirst into living life full fueled. Now, you might be wondering, what does it really mean to be full fueled? Is it just about hitting the gym or maybe eating the right foods? Well, think bigger, think bolder. And to help with this conversation, we have our guest today, Matt Tack, and he's on a mission to help us become forever athletes by mastering six key pillars, which are fuel, movement, sleep, mind, work, and spirit. These two are the dynamic hosts of the growing Full Fueled podcast and champions of living a life full of meaning, energy, and purpose. But it wasn't always this easy. Well, Matt knows the struggles of burnout, depression, and insecurities firsthand. Matt, at the age of 26, almost walked away from his marriage and life before finding his purpose through a 90-day recovery program. And now, with 12 years of marriage, three beautiful daughters, and thriving businesses, he's a living proof of what's possible when you decide to rewrite your own story. And Matt is helping people out there just like us break free from the unsustainable lifestyles that are holding us back, just like balancing mindset, life, work, diet, and movement to unleash our full potential. So, if you are feeling tired, overwhelmed, or ready for a change, get ready to be inspired. So, Matt, welcome to the show and let's fuel up. Let's get started with this conversation.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Matt, living life full fueled, it really sounds energizing, but it's also ambitious. So can you share, what the six pillars, which I mentioned in the introduction, fuel, movement, sleep, mind, work, and spirit, mean to you? And why are they the foundation for living as a forever athlete?
Yeah, the reason why we came up with the pillars is just to honestly be purely cognizant of them. In the world we live in today, many people aren't mindful and approach life that way, right? And so fuel, movement, sleep, mind, spirit, and work are all encompassing in terms of checks and balances on a daily basis that you just need to re-energize. Because you're going to be low in some spots in some areas on any given day, but it's when you extend those out and weeks become months and you don't have a healthy mindset or you aren't utilizing the proper nutrition, all those things, right? Those play in compounding in negative way as they do in a positive way. So it's being mindful of them, most importantly, and that realizing, especially coming into the season of like holidays here in the US, it's one of those things where you can get off track really, really quickly. But if those are things that are pillars in your life that you're mindful of, one cookie isn't going to kill the game plan in terms of your overall fuel, right? But the reality is when that compounds and you choose to have, 5, 10 days of various assortments of cookies and chips around the holidays, well, those tend to drag on and carry on. So it's just really being mindful of the fuel that you're putting in your body. Your movement on a daily basis. Are you moving, especially during the holiday season? We tend to become a little bit more static. Sleep, what does sleep look like to you? Because that's a major indicator of how you're going to perform the following day. And then mind, spirit, and work are just those strong pillars in terms of having the proper mindset to make sure we're being goal oriented, how we tacking every day. And one of the things on mine that I would like to approach is that, a lot of people right now are like, well, what does 2025 look like? Well, why are we thinking about 2025 when 2024 hasn't ended yet? And so they're setting goals for the next year in advance, but what's your take on just starting today, right? Don't wait for 2025 to come. Like, how do we start today with that healthy mindset towards the future? So those are the really key things about just making sure we're energizing those pillars on a daily basis.
Makes sense, Matt. Really inspiring. So, when we talk about holidays, they are a time of joy, but also stress, family gatherings, endless to-do lists, and, indulgent habits, which can easily throw us off balance. So, what mindful practices do you recommend to help listeners prioritize their well-being and also stay present?
Yeah, that's such a good term in terms of like staying present because people, including myself, that's one of my biggest struggles is just always putting things in the narrative of the future. Oh, I'm gonna get it when, but truly being present. And with kids, really that has come home for me. And one of the best ways I do that in the most practical way, is I have a bedtime routine. So I go to sleep pretty much the same time every night. So it's 9:30. You'll see me in bed, usually before, no later than 10 o'clock. So I have that window of time where I'm entering bed, I'm entering sleep. Uh, and then the other thing is just getting up in the mornings a little bit earlier than my kids, to just be therapeutic in nature. So I'll do a little bit of stretching. I'll do some reading and then I'll do some devotional and then maybe a little bit of writing as well. But, those are some of the tactics that I have just naturally to allow my body to like, hey, I have complete presence because I'm capturing the morning. I think that's really crucial. You can utilize it in other ways too. Like some people like working out in the morning. But the most critical thing is the night before. So preparing your body for sleep, getting adequate amount of sleep, and then waking up with that rested mindset, and coming into the day, whereas it isn't all hectic, right? Some of the best things, and one of the books I read is, some of the things that can help you is really like laying out your clothes for the following day. That's
Mhm.
extremely helpful to some people. So like doing that the night before. Um, I need to get a lot better job at doing that, just like picking my clothes out instead of just like that being a decision that I have to make in the morning. But those are some of the just major things that I would say, or I guess minors. Because I think when you master in the minors, you're in the majors, right? Uh, but is just getting adequate sleep, preparing your body for sleep, and then getting up with a very like intentional mindset in the mornings.
Mm. I agree. Also, Matt, when we talk about all the six pillars and, someone, let's say, who's starting for the first time, which pillar tends to be the most important out of them all, or maybe which pillar tends to be the biggest struggle for, especially beginners?
Yeah, I go back to sleep. That's always something that's really, been something that I've, through the course of everything that we work at our clinic and people just don't wake up refreshed in the morning. They don't treat sleep as as almost a mindful tactic to like you're treating your body to something.
Mhm.
And so they don't get adequate amount of sleep, so they're waking up really foggy. And sleep is a dictator of how you're going to eat the following day too, because if you get adequate sleep, you can be more mindful towards what you're putting into your body, which indicates your fuel. It's going to indicate like how you're going to be thinking. Are you thinking positive thoughts with your mind when you get adequate sleep, when you're well rested, right? Um,
Yep.
it basically is, I would say I would put that directly in the center, and it is the spoke that touches each and every one of the pillars, because I don't believe you can be truly mindful without adequate sleep. People just don't treat it. We overlook it so much. And
Mhm.
sleep is just such an imperative tool that people can use for the purposes of being really a more optimized human.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Great. Also, Matt, many people they pause their fitness and mindfulness routines during the holidays, thinking, let's just restart in the new year. That's going to be my new year resolution. So, how can listeners make small, consistent choices, around movement and mindset to enjoy the season fully and also set themselves up for success in the year ahead?
Yeah, starting today instead of 2025, this was a thought that came through my mind is that so many people right now are literally preparing for 2025 as if 2024 is already over. And And so they basically like have it as a wash for the holidays. So these next 2 weeks are essentially a wash, and that's not right, right? Uh,
Mm.
each new day, we're not guaranteed tomorrow, so why not, capture today? And so I was listening to a podcast the other day as far as
Mhm.
making meaningful moments every day.
Mhm.
And that really is like part of the process of life is like, how are we making meaningful moments every single day?
Right.
Um, and one of those things is stepping into a state of like discomfort. And, sleep is, going to sleep timely is really uncomfortable for a lot of people because they want to be on their phone, they want to stimulate their mind, they want to watch TV, they want to do all these other things. Um, but, just setting a bedtime and not waiting until 2025, but like just start tomorrow. Like that's a very healthy way. And I will go as far as saying it'll stick if you choose to start tomorrow, right? Or tonight, if you're even, that. So like that's one of the big ways that I
Mhm.
would say like as a takeaway is like start earlier. Like start everything earlier because you're not guaranteed um to have those days in 2025. So why not start now? Um, and then the other thing is being disciplined in your approach with like fuel over the holidays.
Mhm.
Specifically, like when you're coming in and you're like, oh, I'm going to get to that later again. It's this like later initiative. It's like, just starting now being super mindful of like getting, quality proteins in and getting whole foods through in your body. Those are
Mhm.
just some of the like the really, really basic ways that we from a nutritional standpoint
Mhm.
can have massive impact on our sleep. So the way we eat can have, truly a crazy amount of impact on our sleep. So those are some of the things. And then I would say this too, and I love the fact that we do this as a family very
Mhm.
frequently, but like after we eat, instead of like sitting down, we go on walks. So walking more is a good thing. In fact, my wife and I just got back from just an afternoon walk where we got some indirect sunlight,
Yep.
in the middle of the day. I think,
Mhm.
taking breaks and walking and just enjoying life and nature and all the things sounds pretty crunchy, but at the end of the day is like one of those things that's is massively beneficial
Mhm.
to just like the movement in mind and spirit. I'm a big believer in this like move your mind, move your body movement. Um,
Yep.
and so, or move your body, move your mind. I'm sorry, I reversed those. And so, as you do that, you'll just naturally see like health benefits. Like if you move more, you'll feel healthier, right? And so, the cool thing scientifically about how that works too is after you eat, if you move right away, it actually you don't have as much of a glycemic spike after
Mhm.
you eat because your body's moving, so it's breaking it down more efficiently. So, just move, like walk, after you eat. And then walk as a family. I think it's crucial to walk with a loved one, or your kids or your wife or whoever it might be.
Yeah, I totally advocate for that because, walking and soaking up some sunlight, it can actually scientifically balance, those hormones and, get into us into the correct circadian rhythm. And, it's very beneficial. So, Matt, also, when we talk about discipline and consistency, uh, from the listener's perspective, we can say that, life isn't always predictable. So, how do you balance the need for structure with flexibility to adapt when things don't go as planned?
Yeah, I call this kind of method shortening the gap, right?
Mhm.
Because there's always going to be those interruptions in your life. It just naturally occurs, right? But the more intentional you can be about those interruptions, the better. And then that becomes being cognizant of your surroundings, right? And then what is that doing to you personally? Many people don't realize like, interruptions create this like stress factor. Um, but there are staples that you can maintain even when there's interruptions in the season, like you can become adapt. And so I'll just give you a practical way. A few years ago, when I was raising young kids, so we had 3 kids under 5.
Mhm.
unfortunately, I wasn't able to work out the way I wanted to, but that wasn't an excuse not to work out, right? And so, because like a movement was like imperative to me. And so I had to change up the way I worked out. And so I did more functional based training with like a class, and it was
Mhm.
hyper focused. Like I only did it for about 30 to 45 minutes and then I was done. And I had to do it at very early time in the morning because I knew that I couldn't dictate the rest of the day. And now that season has changed a little bit. So kids always create an interruption. So anyone listening that has kids, you guys know the amount of interruption that
Yeah.
typically happens with children. They're just it's for lack of better words, it's chaos sometimes. And so then you can dictate different areas that you can create structure and discipline in. And so for me, one of the big things was that I had to movement was such a critical piece to my like overall health and well-being and my mindset. And so I had to adjust appropriately. So I did like a lot of at-home workouts. And then,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, really early in the morning, I did 3 days a week. I did it with some guys. Um, so that's a really big, piece for me of being able to be nimble, realizing that there's an interruption, and then being able to figure it out, right? Because like I truly believe that everything in life is figure outable.
Mhm.
We just need to kind of look at it, stop, and I got this like method of like pray, pause, plan.
Mhm.
So sometimes you just need to stop, kind of look at it from a myopic viewpoint,
Mhm.
and then realize what things need to change and what doesn't need to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I just love the word nimble. No, yeah. So before we wrap up, Matt, a little bit personal question for you. So you have been very open about hitting a low point in your 20s, facing depression and almost leaving your marriage. So what mindset shifts helped you rebuild your life and find purpose again?
Yeah, in my early 20s, it was one of those things where it came down to humility. I was drinking a lot of alcohol, I was partying, I was doing all the things that I guess you could say many people in the world think is like, oh, it's fine to do, it's fine to drink on the weekends, it's fine to do these things, but what I realized is I was in an unhealthy mindset, and that was a coping mechanism for me, which then further spun myself really like more out of control in terms of like my mindset. And so then, I had to come to the breaking point of like, what was my life going to look like, in my, late 20s and early 30s, and now I'm in my later 30s. Uh, and the shift was humility. The fact that I needed help and that then I sought that help. So many people don't like think they're the only ones in the world that are in depression or they're in a lacking marriage and all these things, and they just don't want to ask for help, and then it becomes a spiral downhill. Um, but at the end of the day, like if you realize like there's a level of humility in you, you're like, I need help. And then I want to be curious on how I can grow from here. Because really those were the things, right? It was an act of humility and then a constant search of curiosity that allowed me to grow. And then now every day is like, how do I grow every day? Like in some capacity, how am I learning and growing every single day? I don't want to waste time. I always want to consistently grow. And so that's where curiosity comes into play. And so I eliminated a lot of things too. Like you have to look at it from what you're going to eliminate. So I eliminated majority of the alcohol consumption. Uh, I will have a glass of wine with my wife, but I don't drink much alcohol. And then I became dialed in, in other areas as well, including obviously the way I move my body, the fuel that I put into my body, all the things, right?
Yeah.
That I'm now able to be very observant of. But it started with humility and then came curiosity of how I can grow. And so those are the two main things that I would recommend. Do you have to reach out for help? And then are you willing to get help to then renew your mindset towards curiosity?
Definitely. Great, great, Matt. And finally, for our listeners, they wish to connect with you and also they wish to explore more about these six pillars and also check how they can also have their life, which is fulfilled, how they can do that.
Yeah, so we have a clinic in Tampa Bay. So that's the first way if you're local to there. We also have telemedicine. So if you need to hop on a call and kind of want to dial in the movement side of things, we can help you with that. We have a protocol called the Genesis Protocol that we do digitally online. If you just want to follow along and get free information, I'm usually on Instagram or Facebook, Matthew Tack on Facebook and Human.Optimizer on Instagram. And our clinic here is Alessi Functional Health, where we just provide pain-free future. So proactive medicine is what we do at Alessi Functional Health.
Hmm. Great. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes for our listeners. And Matt, thank you so much for this inspiring, thoughtful, and also energizing conversation. Right from overcoming personal struggles to living a life that is fulfilled. You have really shown us the power of purpose, consistency, mindfulness. And, whether it's all about feeling your body, finding clarity in your mind, or embracing a spirit driven approach to life, there is so much we can take away from your journey. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great being on the Healthy Mind podcast. I appreciate you.
Great, great. And listeners, as we step into our own lives, let's remember to show up for ourselves, mind, body, and spirit, just like Matt has done. And small steps today can lead to a life of meaning, growth, and longevity. And if you loved this episode, don't forget to connect with Matt. You can have all the details along with this episode in the show notes on your favorite podcast platform. And thank you to everyone for tuning into this episode of the Mindful Living podcast. Until next time, I am your host, Sana. Stay mindful, stay balanced, and keep fueling your best life. Thank you.